Hello, Curly. Here we are again. Maybe for the last time. But if you want to kill him, at least give him a chance. A chance to defend himself. Now I give you each a bullet. Walk in opposite directions. At the third stroke of the bell, you turn and shoot.
The following film podcast frequently contains adult content, including foul language and descriptions of adult situations. Spoilers for the films discussed occur often. Listener discretion is advised. Now take it away, Dr. Rausch.
They must be destroyed on sight.
This is They Must Be Destroyed on Sight, episode 162. And I'm your host, Lee. You only betray a Mexican woman once, Russell. And I'm joined by my co-host, Daniel. Never question a man who pays well, Harper. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. I am hairy-chested like Jack Palance, and also nude like Jack Palance in the film. So, but my ass doesn't look that good. So, unfortunately for the audience, they don't get to see it. But it's the thing.
Jack Palance, $1 million body, $10 face.
I kind of wonder what Curly's gold looks like these days. No.
So we're going to be doing The Mercenary from 1968. But before we get into that, we do have a couple comments here. Going back to last week where Jeff Williams' recommendation of the week for Macon County Line, he said we'd never look at Jethro Bodine the same way again. Darren Wilson from Psychosomatic Cast was helpful enough to say, Jethro Bodine is Jethro from the Beverly Hillbillies.
Okay.
So there you go. Yeah. So
I mean, the classic Jethro. Like, you know, for some reason my brain went Jethro Tull. And, you know,
so you're picturing someone playing a flute.
Yeah, playing a flute and winning heavy metal awards. Yeah, that was my thought. Yeah,
yeah, I totally blanked on it. It's like I don't think I've ever actually watched an episode of Beverly Hillbillies. So
it's one of those. It was just because I used to watch a lot of like Nick at Night when I was a kid, so it was always kind of available to me in some, but I never really watched it. If that makes sense, it was just kind of like always like, oh, I'm just familiar with the existence of this thing, but I don't think I was ever really a fan of it. So that's where he goes.
Yeah, and speaking of Jeff Williams, he gives us our recommendation for this week, and it is Monsieur Hire. Following the mysterious murder of a young girl in a French suburb, the local misanthrope Monsieur Hire is suspected by both neighbors and police. Could the sexy woman next door be the next victim? A fantastic reworking of the Julien Duvivier classic Panique. Patrice Leconte's version completely changes the tone, theme, and structure of the original, but by making the story into a character-driven noir love triangle instead of a treatise on anti-Semitism. Michael Blanc is somehow both repellent and sympathetic in the title role, and Sandrine Bonnier is stunning and unpredictable as his beautiful neighbor. Strongly recommended going into this film fully blind and completely ignorant of Panique's plot as well for maximum enjoyment. Well, that won't be difficult for me because I've never seen Panique, so yeah.
I don't watch anything French, so fuck that. No, I'm kidding. No, it does. No, I'm interested in both films now, but I'm gonna deliberately not look anything up about it. And we should. We should start doing these. I mean, I know we've done some of them, but I feel like every time I listen to one, I'm like, oh, that sounds like a really good idea. Geez, This guy sounds like someone who might, should do a podcast about these sorts of things.
Really, yeah.
And, maybe would be better than the one you're listening to now.
Yeah. It's like, well, why are we doing your job for you, Jeff? You should be fucking talking about this shit. But yeah, thank you very much, Jeff. Always love to see your recommendations, and we should get into some like French crime films and stuff at some point in the future. Like I've got Le Samurai sitting on my shelf, just burning a hole in my shelf, basically. Like,
yeah, definitely. Well, I'm amazed it took us this long to get to this one because this has been on the list for 2 years now. So
yeah,
shows you how long it takes for us to get to the ones we really, really want to do.
Yeah. But anyway, we can move on to what we've watched in the last while. I've got nothing to talk about, but I know Daniel has something, so take it away.
Yeah, no, I saw probably going to be the biggest film of all time at the end. We're not going to talk about that one. We have another sideline podcast where we discuss these, but I did see the big movie this week. Mm-hmm. But I did watch something on Netflix. I watched The Free State of Jones. The 2016 Matthew Modine, or not Matthew McConaughey. Yeah. Matthew Modine would have been a very different choice for that role. Interesting choice, but no, Matthew McConaughey film about this a real life deserter from the Civil War, from the Confederate side of the Civil War, who ends up kind of going into rebellion against the Confederacy. This is a film directed by Gary Ross. Gary Ross is probably best known for directing The Hunger Games, but he was also he wrote and directed Pleasantville and Seabiscuit, and he wrote Big and Dave. So he's been around for a while. This was it's funny, like it made me want to kind of learn more about the real history, and even reading the Wikipedia page for the real history definitely kind of gave me a sense of, wow, there's so much that's just not in this film. Like this film is kind of the hagiographic version of this. This does feel like the kind of the papered over, the kind of the version that the family of this guy kind of wants spread. The real story seems even more heroic in the real thing, in the real history, but also like much more sort of morally ambiguous, and also not nearly as much of a white savior. That's kind of the big thing that kind of this film is kind of famous for, is, oh yeah, it's this like mixed race regiment of people who built an anarchist collective in like 1863, and it turns out to be, it's all the pretty white boy. He did all the things that are not, and African American characters kind of like fade into the background after a while, and they just kind of come back in there. Anyway, it's a pretty good film. I like it. I liked the film as a film, but I was kind of left ultimately empty by it. It really didn't kind of get at the thing that I wish it did, and it did make me kind of decide I am going to have to like read one of the books about this guy at some point, because I think that getting more of the real history I think would be more interesting, and I'm interested to see whether the structure of the film is kind of taken from a couple of the books that were kind of written, that it's sort of based on, or if it is kind of more just kind of Hollywood horseshit. Because apparently a bunch of the incidents actually were in the books, but there's a lot of question about whether they actually happened or whether it was just kind of a lie. Anyway, so yeah, no, The Free State of Jones is on Netflix, and it's probably worth it. I mean, if you like that sort of thing, it was not unentertaining. It was definitely worth a watch. So check it out. Yeah,
I had mulled that one over a couple times. Never really.
If nothing else, just it shows the reality of the Civil War, the American Civil War, probably about as well as anything ever will, in the sense that the American Civil War was basically a bunch of kids walking, and being slaughtered by rifle fire. Mm-hmm. Most people who fought in that war never fired a shot. Like 600,000 people died in that war, and it's completely. If you think about like the kind of the opening sequence of Saving Private Ryan, like that level of gore, the first like 15-20 minutes of this film kind of events that. I mean, it's very nearly that brutal, but without the patina of sentimentality that Spielberg kind of gives to everything. You understand exactly why this guy, just decides to fucking leave.
Yeah, you would think a lot of people would.
And there were. I mean, that's why. I mean, they had to. I mean, that's why. It's punishable by death. And I think the sort of the mainstream. I mean, even the sort of revisionist histories, even the non-lost cause histories of the Civil War, sometimes lean into a little bit of the kind of the valor of battle and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not anybody who fights on the good fight of a war. I'm not gonna kind of countersignal that. It's a meat grinder. This was a meat grinder.
Yeah.
And the degree to which we sort of forget that, or that we valorize that, is kind of disgusting. But that's another topic for another time. That certainly isn't something that comes up in this film. Yeah.
No, not at all. It doesn't touch on any of that sort of thing.
No, not at all. Not at all.
But yeah, we're going to take a quick break. We'll play some music and some podcast promos, and we'll come back with a Mercenary.
Hello, and welcome to Hello, This is the Doom Show. I'm Richard.
And I hate the burning.
Shh, who are you? Speak.
And I'm Brad.
She came in and said, "Buck, buck, buck," and he said, "Buck, buck, buck," and she said, "Buck, buck, buck, buck." That's what I got.
One is the Suspiria boner, the other's the Inferno boner. Anyway.
Which one is crying? The boner of tears.
Hello, This is the Doomed Show is available on hellodoomedshow.podomatic.com and doomedmoviethon.com.
Hello, this is the Doom Show. Richard, Brad, Jeffrey, Naffa. It's the Doom Show. Hello, this is the Doom Show. Slashers, giallo, and horror.
Clytus, I'm bored. What plaything can you offer me today?
An obscure body in the SK system, Your Majesty. The inhabitants refer to it as the planet Earth.
How peaceful it looks.
Most effective, Your Majesty. Will you destroy this Earth?
Destroy it utterly.
Send Rick and Danny in Wool Rocket Ajax.
So, just destroy it?
That's what Ming said. Don't you ever listen?
Well, there's no arguing with Ming.
Hail Ming. Wait! You see those transmissions on the Visua screen?
Crow? Nightmare on Elm Street?
Chud 2? Black Belt Jones?
Nightbreed?
What's a critter?
Oh, I've seen those things.
Flash? I guess we could wait a while before the destruction.
Yeah, and watch some movies.
And talk about them.
The Hell Ming Power Hour. Disobedience to Ming. For now.
You can find us at Legion Podcast.
You can find us on Facebook.
iTunes.
We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram.
At You know what? Just Google it for yourself.
Just Google it, you bastages.
Hail Ming.
Breaking 2? Electric Boogaloo?
Samurai Cop?
Army of Darkness?
Flashdance?
We might destroy the planet if it's Flashdance.
right, The Mercenary from 1968.
He sells death to the highest bidder. He'll sell your life for what he thinks it's worth. He is the mercenary. If you're not ready to buy, be ready to die. Mercenary. He aims for the money. His gun does the rest. Franco Nero, Tony Musanti, Jack Palance, Giovanna Raleigh. The mercenary. The sun at his back, a gun at his side, a town at his mercy.
8K A Professional Gun, Revenge of a Gunfighter and Professional Gun. Directed by Sergio Corbucci, written by Franco Salinas, Giorgio Orlorio, Luciano Vincenzoni, Sergio Spina, Adrino Bolzoni, and Sergio Corbucci. And we'll get into that in the trivia, why there's so many fucking writers on this one, by the way. You would think that many writers, the quality is going to be really bad, but turns out not to be.
Not so much, no. That's interesting.
Starring Franco Nero, probably at this time, arguably the most beautiful man in the world, as Sergei Polak Kolowski. Tony Musante in his only spaghetti western as Paco Roman. And you might know him best from The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. He was in that film. Jack Palance as Ricolio, or better known as Curly in the English versions of this. Giovanna Raleigh as Columba. Eduardo Fajardo as Alfonso Garcia, and he was the bad guy in Django. And we also talked about him in Oasis of the Zombies, of all things.
Well, that's how it goes.
He had a long, varied career. And in this one, he's kind of looking like Sean Connery a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Franco Giacorbini as Papote, Alvaro de Luna as Roman, Raf Baldassar as Matteo, Joe Kamal as Sebastian, and Franco Rissell as Studs. Synopsis for this I pulled from IMDb from someone called Captain Quirk. A greedy Polish mercenary aids a mine worker and peasant girl as they lead a revolution against the oppressive Mexican government and are pursued by an American rival. Yeah, that's kind of it. But, good try. There's a lot more nuance in this one, I think, than just that.
Right,
but,
But Citizen Kane, it's a story of a kid who gets rich and then loses some money.
I won't mention before we get into this. So actually, we'll just get this out of the way. Actually, the reason there were so many writers on this. So originally, before Sergio Corbucci came into this project, Giulio Pontecorvo, who did Battle of Algiers, was slated to be the director for this one.
Yeah.
And Salinas, who also wrote on that film, was writing for this, and they did a story that was based on a much darker, I think it was a play or something along those lines, about an American mercenary and a black revolutionary who get together. And apparently that one ends super fucking dark. Like, it's much more of a social political statement than even this film does. But they changed it. They didn't want to go that dark. Corbucci came in and rewrote a bunch of stuff on this and made it more of a straight up action film. And they brought Nero in. So that's kind of where we are with this. And I'll throw over to you, Daniel. Is this your first time watching? And what's your sort of initial thoughts on it?
This was I've been hanging on to this one. I've been kind of not watching this until we were going to do it on the podcast because I knew it was going to be one I was going to love, and it is a film that I deeply love and will be watching on many occasions, most likely. I was joking about the I'm not sure if it's going to end up in the edit, but I was joking about the theme song. La Rina is possibly my favorite piece of like movie music ever. So I listen to it all the time. I could this movie would kind of be a sentimental favorite just based on the use of the theme. Besides that, my God, this is a really phenomenal film. One of the best spaghetti westerns, I think. Corbucci, kind of think of him as being this super dark, deeply political guy. This seems to be him combining that with a little bit more of a kind of a thrill-seeking kind of mainstream appeal kind of thing, and I think it mostly works really well. It kind of being both things about being this dark, complicated rumination on the nature of revolution, and kind of a fun buddy movie, you know, with a little bit of a sex comedy aspect to it. It's kind of all three things at once. I found it interesting. I was looking at this Giovanna Reali, who plays Columba, who steals the last half of the movie. Mm-hmm. She was kind of known for being in Italian sex comedies in the 50s. So I think we need to definitely put some of those on our list because I was watching this. My wife was sitting next to me, and she shows up, and my wife on her phone kind of glancing over occasionally and literally looked over the second she's on screen and goes, "Oh, who is she?" It was definitely kind of one of those moments, equal to Claudia Cardinale, in my opinion.
She's got that same level of striking presence, I think,
Franco Nero, amazing. You were kind of talking about how good-looking he is. Mm-hmm. I keep thinking that Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid was made the same year as this film, and Franco Nero kind of combines all of the boyish good looks of Robert Redford in that film with the piercing, striking blue eyes and strength presence of Paul Newman. So it's kind of like best of both worlds, but Italian. So, even better than that.
Watching this film, this is where I've kind of felt after so many rewatches of this, he's equal or even better than Clint Eastwood ever was in any of his spaghetti westerns. He's just that fucking good.
He is. I mean, it's sort of like Eastwood. I mean, I feel like Eastwood, I don't want to say like kind of coasted on the fact that Leone was as good as he was, but there is a sense in which, like The Man with No Name trilogy is not great because of Eastwood. It's great because of Leone, and Eastwood is just good in it. I mean, he's not bad. I'm not, but like he's certainly not the thing that I kind of go back to. It's Leone kind of made those films what they were. Yeah. And I think that I would be hard pressed to kind of say like Nero could have done that as well as Eastwood did, because I think Nero brings a different kind of presence to the films. Right. At the same time, I think the fact that Eastwood went on to have a 4-decade career as one of highly lauded Hollywood film stars and directors, and Franco Nero kind of went on to do a whole bunch of low budget spaghetti westerns and such. There's a dichotomy there that's really unearned. I think Franco Nero is really fucking good. Everything I've seen him in, he's been pretty phenomenal. I mean, not least of which, of course, is Django. But this is him. I think this is probably the best I've seen him, quite honestly.
And his award-winning turn in Die Hard 2.
I did not remember he's in it. I kind of forget that Die Hard 2 exists. In my opinion, there's only one Die Hard. That's
but he's the vaguely Latino general or whatever, that the ex-military guy who's the main antagonist in Die Hard 2 is trying to like save or whatever, like he's being transported or some shit.
Oh, he's like the MacGuffin in the film. Okay.
Yeah,
so,
he is.
Right, yeah. All right. So there's a reason I can't remember him. Anyway. No, I love the film. Jack Palance, he gives a good bad guy. Definitely both that kind of theatrical, big kind of movie star bad guy, but also like not so over the top that he's not sort of believable in that same way. I mean, the whole film kind of rests on being both this kind of socio-political drama story of this weird revolutionary and his, paid helper, who's really running the show. And again, that bigger, more Hollywood production. And I think Palance it's just right on that knife edge of being like too far one way or the other. But I think it's a tricky role, and I think he pulls it off really well. Overall, I'm really impressed with the execution here.
Yeah, I love pretty much everything about this film. I mean, right from the start, where you got the sort of sepia toned pictures of like the 1900s Mexico or whatever, where it gives you sort of sets the stage. Like here's the Mexican Revolution. Here's the stuff that's leading up to it. You see all these like imperial powers and stuff harming the government and impressing the citizens.
Which again connects to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. I mean, it's weird that these two movies are made like right at the same moment. You know. Anyway, yeah. Continue.
And of course, this is a quote unquote Zapata spaghetti western, so it does deal with Mexican Revolution. Part of the reason why you see like a guy like Corbucci get into this, because Corbucci, like a lot of his contemporaries in Italian directing at the time, were all sort of like Marxists.
Yep.
And
only a communist could have made this film. That's you know.
Well, and here's the thing: like, this is made at a time where you're getting the student protests.
And, I mean, you know.
Like I think mostly in France, but like also around other places in
France
Europe.
And Italy, no, definitely.
Yeah. And at this time, it wasn't as successful as one would have hoped. So, but at this time, it was still like all sort of, you know, the sky's the limit kind of thing. This film has a more lighthearted tone. It's not the downer like The Great Silence is.
Right, yeah. No, I kept waiting for like the really dark ending, you know, and I think it fakes us out a couple of times, you know, with what's going to end up happening. But, you know, you're right. That, I mean, 68, I mean, obviously this is also the year of like Night of the Living Dead. I mean, this, you know, there's this revolution is just in the air. And I think that there is, you know, this film is very much kind of that time. And I feel like we have to kind of understand it as both kind of looking back to this kind of revolutionary period and kind of recognizing this sort of revolutionary fervor that's kind of going on in the culture at the time. Certainly an audience kind of seeing it at the time would have kind of been on board with that. I mean, you know, there's no doubt that, you know, it would have at least, you know, it would have been like, oh, why do they insert the politics into our like spaghetti westerns? Come on. Bunch of SJWs, you know.
Yeah. This film, like I said, its initial writing for the script and everything was much more political and social.
Yeah.
So Corbucci here realizes we got to make this entertaining.
Right.
So
we don't want the audience to slit their wrists at the end. That's the goal. Yeah.
So instead of getting like the Battle of Algiers, which is just really depressing, like a great movie but depressing as fuck, instead you start off with this sort of present day thing with Franco Nero giving us a voiceover and ruminating about, okay, we're gonna get into a flashback of when I first met Paco and what's going on. But I love how it starts off where the saddest looking dwarves in clown makeup come out of the fucking doorway. And it's like, whoa, okay.
I love how like sad and weird and real all of it looks. I mean, it is kind of one of those things where, you know, you really could, you know, like, I mean, today, like, we expect our production values to be so good that like it can't look like this anymore.
Yeah.
But, you know, then they, you know, at that point they could basically just kind of put on a little circus and like, it looks kind of like a circus probably did look around 1920 and, you know, right along the border of Mexico and the U.S. And, you know, that's just sort of the thing that it was. Like, you know,
Nero's performance in this is fucking great. I love how he's just walking around striking matches like it's a little gimmick.
At one point, he strikes matches on a woman's cleavage. Like,
yeah,
you know?
It's the great. Yeah, they're at this like whorehouse, and he strikes a match off
like,
her.
How could you possibly get that much friction? What does that say about the level of sun damage that's been done to this poor woman's tits? You know,
the woman looks surprised too. She's like looking at the other prostitutes, like, "What the fuck? Like, how did that happen?"
Magic matches, apparently. You know.
Yeah, like he strikes like that's sort of the sort of surreal nature of like these spaghetti westerns, where you know some stuff just is kind of almost supernatural. At one point, he strikes a match off a guy's teeth. You know?
Yeah. Well, it's like where the heroes can, you know, like are so good with the gun that they can like kill 4 people while the other, you know, and without even like blinking, you know, and of course that's completely unrealistic. Level of, you know, this is just that, but with a match, and it does kind of put us in this kind of hyper realized world that then sort of makes some of the more kind of trenchant observations about human nature in the film just that much more interesting. I mean, it would be a little bit like, again, in a kind of a modern day context, it would be like kind of sitting down to kind of like a smaller budget superhero movie and suddenly being like, this is really about the Mexican Revolution. You know? Like,
although Franco here, he's not necessarily portrayed as this super skilled gunfighter either. Like he's much more a schemer. He's a very thinking man's kind of like gunfighter. He's manipulating people,
and he's more just kind of knowledgeable. He's more just kind of like, oh, I'm the guy who can like put together the machine guns and then show you and then like fire it off. And there's not a sense of Yeah, I mean, he does have a couple of sequences where he's just shown as being really good with the gun. I'm thinking more about the scene in Django where he like pulls out the gun for the first time, and like suddenly he's getting into fist fights and all that kind of stuff, and he's this kind of supernaturally competent, gunfighter. Which a lot of these films just kind of display that. That's just sort of goes with the territory with these kind of movies. But
he's only really shown as being like super great with a gun when early on in the film where he decides, okay, well, I'm going to hire my services out to these pseudo revolutionaries because the silver miners who initially hired me are all dead. So, so I might as well find some new bosses, and he gets behind the fucking machine gun that he bought. And so he starts shooting the fucking machine gun around and wiping out these sort of government troops. They're backed by imperialist powers. He represents, to some degree, imperialist powers as well.
Yeah, no.
And he's being hired out by the revolutionaries, which is kind of a thing that went on during the Mexican Revolution. Both sides were being played together in a proxy war by imperialist powers, very much like Venezuela is today. Very much.
I was thinking you could imagine I thought about us doing like a remake with this film, but like I had a vision of doing this set in like kind of modern day Afghanistan, where you've got like a U.S. occupation, and you've got kind of the villagers who are being strafed with bombs, and you got like this kind of mercenary, this Blackwater guy or whatever, who shows up and is hired by one of the villages to help them fight off the U.S. and the basic situation is I don't want to say universal, but it's certainly much it's not really set in Mexico in 1917 or whatever. It's a lot more complicated, a lot more nuance of that.
Yeah, but so that's where you get your sort of political readings and stuff in this, where it's very broad strokes, but Corbucci's still trying to make the points here. And Curly is just, he comes off as like the darker side of the mercenary attitude, where he's just like, he's looking to fuck everybody over. Like, he doesn't care who's paying him. He doesn't want anyone paying him, really. He just wants to take everybody's money and and fucking go.
Repeat customers are not a big concern for him,
Yeah,
but also like he kind of makes it personal. Like, he's after these two guys, like they kind of like damage his professional reputation, and he's like, well, fuck this,
Yeah, because he and Kowalski know each other from they're both professionals in the business. So
you kind of get their competitors, and there's a little bit of like professional pride going on, and then when he gets stripped naked and kind of sent on his way, it's kind of like, all right, don't worry, I'll be back.
Yeah, when they fucking railroad him and kill his men, and decide, Kowalski decides, well, we'll spare him. And it's like, leave him his shirt, at least his long shirt, so at least it's covering his naughty bits and he can walk off with some dignity. And then fucking Curly's like, fuck you. And he takes his shirt off and is like, and walks away just bare ass naked. He's like, fuck you. I'm not going to take your pity or your, your, I'm going to fucking walk to town naked and fucking come back and find you kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's a, great ass shot there. One of the great ass shots in.
I gotta say, Jack Palance.
A couple of great ass shots in this film, actually.
Yeah.
Now that and one of them describing the Boulevard's theory. It's like, oh yeah, there's the head and then there's the ass, and they're connected by the back. And that was a bit of a like, oh, hello, this was unexpected and yet welcome in kind of a creepy way, but yeah.
I like that, at least in this film, like the next film we're going to be tackling, Companeros, is kind of a remake of this film in a way. But in this film, Nero never really quite becomes a revolutionary. Like he's still obviously separate from Paco, but he becomes a friend, the professional thing goes by the wayside by the end of it, where they learn to respect each other to some degree,
Right. Well, there's a sort of because I think Nero or Polak still wants to sort of be in it for the money, but also saying like, okay, well, we can work together as equals. Paco is like, well, no, I believe in this thing, and it's bigger than like my desire for money, and they do respect each other, but they're still kind of going off in different directions. But they've each sort of learned something from the other. I mean, there is a kind of buddy comedy kind of aspect to this,
and that's where Columba's big role in this. She has
two very big roles in this.
Well, that too, but
no, she's amazing. I actually, she becomes the heart of the film in a way. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, because she's the one who from the beginning knows that Polak's just in it for the money.
Right.
And she doesn't like seeing, like, she's like, okay, there might be something with Paco here. Like there might be something we can do with him. And she's kind of the brains behind the whole thing. She's like the heart and soul behind the revolution. She steers Paco into actually becoming the man that he only has sort of vague illusions of becoming.
Right.
She actually steers him to actually becoming the legit revolutionary who cares about his country and the cause.
Right.
And she's constantly trying to downplay and railroad the Polak's involvement in everything. Like she's always, looking down on him. You can't trust this motherfucker.
Well, it's funny how they rely on how this becomes kind of a triumvirate of sorts, because they rely on Polak for tactics. They rely on really Columba for strategy. I mean, you kind of get the sense that she's more the one kind of doing the big picture scheming, or the sort of the idea person, although unfortunately you don't see a whole lot of that in the film. It's kind of more implied. And Paco is sort of the energy. He's sort of the person providing the sort of the spirit, that revolutionary zeal, that kind of like the person that the revolution can rally behind. And so there is a sense in which the three of these people are they all need each other. And I mean, it is ultimately, let's just be honest. I mean, it's Polak who is clearly necessary for this project, but it's him drifting off of the rest of them. I mean, he's literally absorbing the entire resources from this. He's just pulling, like, literally they're just robbing these towns and then giving it directly to Polak as payment for kind of making this happen. It's like, oh, it's a revolution, it's great, we're all going to share everything. And then, like, no, because Polak's taking everything, literally. I mean, $200 a day plus expenses.
That's a lot of money.
This is 1917, or so it's pre-19. I don't know. We don't really get
like
a date,
1910-ish or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I get the sense it's post. It's kind of somewhere in World War One or something.
Well, it's 1900s because, it's not World War One. It's before that. Although there's an anachronism in this where you see like a biplane dropping bombs, which was not something that happened until like at the end of World War One.
Yeah, I mean, the Mexican Revolution is like 1910 to 1920, and I was kind of imagining we're towards the end of that. But I mean, it may be kind of earlier on. So I mean, I'm no expert on the Mexican Revolution.
I mean, we do see you do see modern conveniences. It's obviously post 1900 because you got cars, you've got like gramophones and shit like that. Would just probably wouldn't be available. Like they were around, but they probably wouldn't be available in Mexico before, imperialist powers walked in there and started setting up shop.
Yeah, which, complex history. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's kind of hard to kind of place this at a particular, moment. I mean, this isn't really about real history. It's about this sort of Hollywood reimagining of the real, or not even Hollywood, but, spaghetti wood, reimagining of that real history. But again, kind of like, there is a kind of like a critique of, both an appreciation for the need for revolution, but also a critique of sort of the process by which that happens, like the messiness of like, well, we had to hire a guy to kind of come in and do some of the dirty work for us because we didn't have the expertise and the problems that kind of come along with that. But also the thing kind of goes to Paco's head, and he starts to, kind of do some really awful stuff the second he's given any kind of degree of power. I mean, no one comes out of this film. I mean, some of these characters end up covered in literal pig shit, and others are more the figurative kind,
Yeah.
I think Columba is the one that is really the only one that really kind of comes across as like kind of on the right side of history here. But
she really is.
She's allied with these two dirtbags, so
they're more for her. They're more necessary evils than anything else. But although I guess she legit falls in love with Paco by the end of it, So.
I just want to see the threesome. That's what I like.
Yeah, you kind of figured like it was bound to happen.
I'm imagining this as a poly-triad. That's my
that's your headcanon for it.
That's my headcanon, and a triad, not a V. I imagine that when Columba's not feeling well, these two, I can see them kind of going at it. They're clearly very comfortable with one another.
Yeah, they are like back and forth, and it's very much a very close sort of like almost brother relationship where at some points they're at each other's throat, and other points they're like totally cool with each other, and they're just I'm
just gonna say a lot of men left the trenches of World War I with having had feelings they didn't quite know how to process in 1918. You know,
Right.
You know, war does amazing things for people. You know, going through those kind of experiences. And if you're trying to say I'm gonna start writing slash fic of these two characters, I'm absolutely gonna be on it. I'm gonna be on AO3 tonight, like, you know, typing away. Not really.
Yeah, I do like some of the set pieces and like just the way this is shot. A lot of the stuff looks better than anything Leone has shot, as far as I'm concerned.
No,
there's the man. I think it's just the fact that this is a spaghetti western where not all the beautiful shots are in stark daylight. Like you have that night shot with the rainstorm where they're coming up to that like old burnout ruins with like the Jesus on the cross thing, and like, man, that looks so good. Like
it does. I mean, I think we both own the Blu-ray for this now, so yeah, no, some of the photography on this is absolutely gorgeous. I'm thinking about some of the. I mean, it's going to sound weird to say this, but some of the like dusk photography, like the outdoor dusk photography, the sky looks so amazing that I swear it was a matte painting, except it's not, you know?
Yeah, it's
like,
not.
And I mean that in the best possible way. Like, it looks like a painting, but it's actually what the sky looks like, you know? But it's that evocative, and it's that, I mean, it is, there's a stylized, it's funny to say, like, there's a stylized quality to the way the sky just naturally looked, but there's a real purposeful kind of art direction. There's a real purposeful kind of vision behind this, and that it really does kind of come across as, it's really effectively shot. It's a gorgeous film. And, you know, a lot of the kind of, you know, a lot of even the great like spaghetti westerns, I mean, a lot of them just kind of look kind of low budget, and you know, like, even when they're gloriously shot, you don't get, you know, they're not pleasing to the eye necessarily. This is incredibly pleasing to the eye in almost every shot. So
I love the setups that he does in this too. Like initially where Polak comes into the mining camp, and at first he doesn't see Paco's revolutionaries have attacked the mining camp and they've hung everybody in it. Right. And initially he doesn't see the first couple people hung, which are actually down in the well. They're hung down in the well, and there's a shot looking down at that, and he's walking by it unaware. And then he comes up, and then all of a sudden he starts seeing all these fucking bodies hung everywhere, and you have shots panning up at bodies, looking up at them from the floor.
Yeah.
And then you have like these really great set pieces, basically following the revolutionaries at their, you know, their different attacks and stuff they do. The one at the Day of the Dead festival where Columba's wearing the Jesus, she's as Jesus, and she's wearing the beard.
Oh God,
yeah,
that's such a surreal moment.
Yeah,
like, that's such a, like, there's a lot of, like, I mean, you know, and I'm kind of like a buddy comedy cop movie or whatever, but those kind of sequences where like suddenly like everybody's in a big costume and there's a bunch of like purple robes, and you know, we built a little float, all to like basically just pull out our machine guns and just blow everybody away.
Yeah.
And I mean, it does, you know, there is like some symbolism there, you know, like where bearded lady Jesus comes and is like kicking ass, but also just it's like weird imagery. I mean, it is sort of borrowing from some of the again, that kind of 60s counterculture revolutionary spirit. I mean, there is some of that in here, even in this, almost kind of like hidden beneath the surface of what, you know, just looking at the DVD cover, looking at the movie poster or whatever, you think, oh yeah, like, you know, kind of standard spaghetti western. No, there's a lot more going on here, you know, even in just kind of weird little moments like that.
Yeah, I love Curly's death in this. You get the sort of penultimate confrontation, I guess, is what.
Well,
it is.
I had seen that because, you know, if you go and like look for spaghetti western music on YouTube, you know, this scene kind of pops up.
Yeah,
so I'd seen that scene a number of times, and you know, in many, I assumed that was the finale. But no, there's another like 10-15 minutes of movie after the end of that.
Yeah, that's just a little story. That's just Curly looking for revenge.
That's just, I mean, Curly, I mean, you know, Jack Palance probably, I don't know, probably the biggest star in the movie, and you know,
probably.
Depending on how you want to, you know, I don't know, 68, depending on the context,
I'm sure he
whatever,
pulled more money in Hollywood than Nero did. You know, European
sure. I mean, I'm sure in like Italy, maybe Nero was a bigger star, but Palance was the kind of the big American actor in this, and he's not in that much of the film, and there is a bit of a Henry Fonda in Once Upon a Time in the West kind of quality of kind of coming in. I mean, he's not that cold-blooded, and this isn't like that level of epic, but there is a little bit of like, show up, be the bad guy. He's kind of like Alan Rickman in Die Hard. He's like that kind of, like kind of big movie villain. In this,
yeah, because when you watch him earlier in the film, he's always walking away from the violence that he instigates.
Oh yeah, no, like he just kind of gives the nod. I mean, I love there's this like one shot kind of towards the beginning. He has the conversation with the guy, and you see in the background a guy like sharpening a pitchfork, and then, you just the camera just follows him, and he just kind of goes, he just kind of nods. He gets on a horse and he rides by, and then dead body slumped over with a pitchfork in him, and it's like, I mean, that's and it does it again, like in a stream, I think.
When he confronts the two owners of the mine who initially hire the Polak to guard the silver shipments, he railroads them, cuts them off, and okay, are you guys the guys we need? It's like, well, yeah, I'm the owner of the mine. Here's my brother. Well, we don't need him, and so immediately he just nods to his men, kill this guy, and then we got this guy left, and then he's like, so tell me what you know. Why did you hire the Polak? Well, and the guy's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then he's like, hey, Sebastian or Studs or whoever his fucking guy is, kick the shit out of this guy. And while he's walking in to do that, the camera follows Curly doing a circle on his horse. And then he comes back to the guy bleeding now, having his face kicked in. And it's just
there's quite a bit of like the worst of the violence kind of happens off screen, and it's evocative. You get to sort of imagine the thing that's actually happening. I mean, something that kind of happens in Battle of Algiers a little bit with like the torture sequences,
right?
Which is a very different kind of film, but you sort of get the sense of some of the brutality. I mean, even the film is leaning away from some of that, from showing the details on that, which I think, again, feels very modern in a lot of ways. Of like, no, we don't. It's better that you not see this directly. Also, in the film Django, the sequence where the owners of the overseers are having fun with they're letting them escape and then shooting them as they run away, like that sequence, I was kind of reminded of that kind of level of just casual brutality. I mean, this is a little bit more focused because it's kind of like more straight up kind of bad guy violence towards people who have information or whatever. Whereas that's just more like casual cruelty. Yeah. But you can definitely see like Corbucci's style is right there in both of those sequences.
Yeah, and I find in the final sequence of Curly where you sort of get the impression that he's at his most dangerous when he's got people to do his dirty work for him.
Yep.
And then when he's finally confronted with the odds evened by Franco Nero's character, and he's got to have the shootout with Roman, you can sort of tell like where he's got his back turned to him, and they're both waiting for the Polak to ding the final ding on the cowbell. He's kind of nervous, like
and he makes it torturous too. Like Nero is literally sitting. You can just see him. He's
enjoying it.
He's enjoying he's fucking with him. He's fucking with. He doesn't like either of these guys at this point. To a certain degree. I mean, he definitely prefers one to the other, and you kind of get the sense he's watching, and maybe he gave Ramona a little bit of an edge just by like hitting the bell at just the right moment. But no, it's a really effective scene. I really appreciate the. I mean, it's so well executed it's not quite the Mexican standoff kind of thing, but it kind of serves that same kind of like dramatic purpose. And but then again, there's another 10 minutes of movie where no, this is the end. We're not going to kind of dust ourselves off and ride off into the sunset. Like no, we've got I'm going to take you into the authorities now, and then well that turns out not so great, but then turns out Columba kind of saves the day in the end.
Yeah, and then Nero decides, well, you know what, I'll just spare this motherfucker and let him go off and keep his revolution going, and I'll go my way, like at that point, the mutual respect thing comes into play. But should mention though, in the Curly scene, so not only do you get one of the most famous pieces of music that Quentin Tarantino ripped off for his films, you get the shot to the flower in the breast pocket that you get from Django Unchained with Leonardo DiCaprio. Same idea, the surprise death where it's like, oh shit! And all of a sudden, blood starts pumping out of the flower. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No,
good stuff.
It's Tarantino saw this movie a time or two. You can be certain.
I think it's not quite as effective, but it's pretty much nearly on par with Henry Fonda's death in Once Upon a Time in the West. Same kind of.
No, yeah,
the realization on Curly's face at the end that, oh shit, I've been shot.
Well, it's a different kind of film and a different kind of moment, whereas
Yeah.
Once Upon a Time in the West is like the epic where, we're literally going to spend like 8 minutes watching these two people like circle each other. And,
Yeah.
Leone like makes a meal out of these sequences. Whereas Corbucci, he's not, he could have done that, but he's not interested in prolonging it in that way. He's not interested in drawing out the drama. I mean, the point isn't the gunfight. The point is the sort of the character relations, and the point is the sort of the deeper meaning of kind of what's going on here. And no, it's a great sequence. It is not as epic, quote unquote, and capital E, but I think it's great stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, I think
Can I say I love the big fake out at the end where Paco is riding off into the sunset. No, brilliant Morricone score. Like absolutely astounding Morricone score throughout the whole thing. And then suddenly, we get happy Western music, like, like very kind of traditional 50s Western music in a way. Like as we're kind of getting like Paco kind of doing the like, oh, we won. And, you can almost kind of hear like Gene Autry in the background going like, and Paco rode off into the sun, like you can kind of get a little bit of that, which, I mean, it's still great music. It's very like catchy, but it's definitely that more like kind of more traditionalist kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly, you get over the rise, and then 4 guys with rifles just about to like take out Paco, and it's like, oh, it's the end of the Great Silence all over again. Spoilers for the Great Silence if you haven't seen that, but that ends on a real down note, and you're not necessarily expecting it until the last like 3 minutes or so. You are more so than in this film, but I mean, I was really thinking, oh, we're gonna go there. They're just gonna blow him away, but no, we get the nice Hollywood ending, and then we get the end of the more Morricone. So there is a. I mean, it really is playing with genre in some interesting ways, and again, very kind of a postmodern, very 21st century kind of stuff. Spaghetti westerns sometimes get, I think, a little bit of a bad rap for being just kind of like kind of generic. I think people who haven't watched a lot of them, or people just haven't really like paid attention to them, just kind of go, oh yeah, it's a bunch of guys like shooting. It's a bunch of guys, people getting shot in the gut and like going, and then like that's kind of the old Patton Oswalt line. Patton Oswalt's a big fan of these films, but he sort of like gets the like generic kind of quality of some of it. Yeah. I think paying attention to kind of what's going on with the way an audience would have seen it at the time and the way some of the music cues work, I think you definitely get a sense of this is kind of deeply playful in a way. I mean, this does kind of draw from kind of what's going on in cutting edge like French New Wave and cutting edge like Italian cinema of the time. It's just kind of repurposed in this kind of commercial vein. And in that sense, it works a lot of the same way that the kind of the modern blockbusters work, where they're kind of taking that like, 90s indie, kind of, we're going to do pop culture heavy dialogue, heavy sequences, but then we're going to make it about like, space aliens and stuff. And it's going to be, we're going to kind of do both of those things. And so, yeah, no, I think the film, I think it's a remarkable film. It's definitely on my top 10 of the year, no question. So
yeah, it's great. I would say it's not Corbucci's best film, but it's definitely near the top, like top 5 for me. Yeah, and I think it's every bit like the equal of the best Leone stuff, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. Like this and like The Great Silence are like kind of the ones that show that Corbucci was just as good as Leone as far as providing the sort of complete package as far as the genre went.
Yeah, so. I mean, he's doing a different thing, but it's not lesser. It's just a different thing.
And
it's the thing that's a little bit harder to see the genius of, to sit somebody cold down to this who hadn't ever seen a spaghetti western and go, no, this is look at what he's doing here. But I think it's great stuff, and definitely worth seeing. Also, apparently, Giovanni Ralli showed up in. She was directed by Corbucci in the 70s, and some kind of Italian sex comedy. And I'm like, well, we should put that on the list for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
more Giovanni Ralli, and I'm definitely on board with that. And in particular, if she's going to come back with Corbucci, that sounds like a good plan, because there really is. I mean, again, I really want to pair this with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, because it feels like very kind of out of the same kind of thing, because that film is also, I don't know if you've seen that film recently.
Yeah, I've seen it
at all. Okay. And that film is also kind of like, kind of mismatched pair of gunfighters kind of going off and having adventures, and they kind of get involved in some revolutionary activity. And then there's a girl, and there's kind of a love triangle, but not really. And, it's just, so, I mean, it just, so much of this just kind of like, seemed kind of on par with that, but ultimately, I mean, this is clearly the better film. Although I really do like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid as well. So.
Yeah. So Giovanna Rowley, we got another podcast girlfriend, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's all these busty Italian girls. That's,
I think we have a type. Yeah.
Gee, who would have thought?
Yeah. So a little bit of trivia here. During filming, the crew caught sight of what appeared to be a UFO. They filmed it and sent photos to NASA and were impressed with the findings, but nothing further came of it from their discovery. So, hey, I guess NASA was like, Area 51, we'll keep the photos there and not tell anybody. That's probably what they did.
Goes. Yeah, well, it turned out the real Area 51 was in Italy the whole time.
Yeah. It was in Spain where they filmed all these things.
Yeah. No, Area 51, the one in Nevada, not the real Area 51. The real UFO stuff the stuff in Nevada is all fakes. The real UFOs are landing in Spain. That's the.
I bet you Randy Quaid could confirm this for us.
Yeah, I'll bet. Yeah.
Okay. Because he was contractually obligated to provide his voice for the English version, Franco Nero was initially cast as Paco Roman, and James Coburn was hired for the role of the Mercenary, who was originally supposed to be an American, but I guess Coburn dropped out of it due to some disagreements as to whether Nero would be top billed or not. Yeah. So Coburn's role was rewritten and as Polish, so Nero could portray a character of an accent.
Although he in no sense sounds Polish at
all.
No,
not really.
I was not like Polak was really kind of like it's a joke on him or something. Like it's really like he's so dumb he might as well be Polish.
Might as well be Polish
or something. Yeah. Like I kind of got the sense that it was, it's not he's not really Polish. They just kind of call him that or something. I don't know. It was kind of a weird thing. No, I'm kind of now imagining like that there's like an Italian language version with Franco, like that's this version, and then there's an English language version with Franco Nero playing the Paco character and James Coburn. And I really wish the two versions both existed. So
that would be cool. It would be. Yeah. Jack Palance, of course, plays a character named Curly. Palance would later win an Oscar for City Slickers in 1991, where he also played a character named Curly. So there you go.
And I'm now thinking that was probably deliberate, right?
It might have been. Yeah, it might have been. Someone, I don't know who directed that film. Can't remember. But maybe they, sort of pulled from Jack's past in his film career.
I mean, that film was made in 1991, so you got to think that's it's directed by Ron Underwood. I mean, he would have grown up on Westerns.
Probably, yeah.
First film was Future World.
Oh, the sequel to Westworld.
Capricorn 1, yeah. So he would have grown up on this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, you got to imagine that he's born in 1953, so he would have been like 15 when this film was released. So,
he must have cast Palance, due to like shit like Shane and stuff like this.
Yeah.
So box office for this was 1.1 billion lira. So
sure,
pretty good. No matter where.
That's Avengers money, really. Oh no, lira, not dollars. Okay, there's a little bit of
a little bit of disparity, but not much, really, when you think about it.
It's a successful film. So I'm imagining they made like 5 sequels.
No, not at all.
There's an expanded universe of this. Where?
That's a modern thing. DVD info for this: Kino Lorber is your best way. DVD, Blu-ray, 2017. That's the way to go with this one. So
I after the problems sourcing the film last weekend, which I was informed it was on YouTube, and I completely missed that. I bought the Blu-ray. It looks gorgeous. Buy it. It's worth it. It's worth the cash. It really is.
This is one to own in your collection if you like spaghetti westerns. I mean, if you don't have it, then you're doing yourself a disservice, really, kind of. But next week we're going to be, or at least next episode, whenever that happens.
Whenever we can bother to get together again,
Yeah.
Work gets in the way is kind of the ultimate problem. It turns out that being an adult with responsibilities and trying to do a podcast or two, kind of a challenge.
I got to pay for all the soup I eat. Like this.
Yeah. And the audience has no idea why that joke is funny.
Yeah, it's all right. But next time we're going to be looking at some more Sergio Corbucci and some more Franco Nero and Jack Palance. We're going to be looking at Companeros.
And not Giovanni Rowley.
Unfortunately.
I'm disappointed, Yeah.
But still, an interesting film, and we'll be getting to that. And until then, Daniel, tell people where they can find you on the interwebs.
Oh, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at Daniel E. Harper. The main other thing I'm doing right now, other than the Cape Shit podcast, where we're going through all the Marvel movies, that's on the same feed as this one. And the main difference is that we talk about modern stuff that makes money. And I take first chair on that. You can check that out. Just keep listening to the other stuff on this feed, and you'll get another episode eventually.
I think they all know, because I was looking at our downloads, and they're pretty much equal on that to our regular stuff. So
I like to think it's a completely different set of people. Like, nobody actually subscribes. People go download individually episodes, but it's a completely different set of people who are, but at the same number. So that's my vision. No, it's clearly people are subscribed, and they're like, they're all like seeing this thing come up and then just going delete. That's probably what's happening. No, you can check that out. I also do a podcast about terrible people who do not do revolutions and do terrible things, but overt 21st century neo-Nazis. That's it. I don't speak German. There'll be a link in the show notes where you can go find that if you don't already know that. And ironically, this is now the tail that's wagging the dog, because that podcast has way more listeners than this one does.
Yeah.
But this one, much more fun. So, but if you want to hear what I've been working on for the last couple of years that drives spirals of depressive despair and everyone who listens, go check that podcast out. We just did a 2-part series about Holocaust denial, just in case you are curious about how dark that show can get. Anyway.
Yeah. Happy fun time.
Yeah.
And you can find it.
We're going to talk about Holocaust denial with jokes. That's
And you can find a lot less Holocaust denial if you go over to tmbdos.podbean.com.
Not no Holocaust denial, but less.
Very, very, very much less. tmbdos.podbean.com, where you can find our Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Facebook links, and you join our Facebook group. That way you can interact with us, and we'll get back to you, which we often do.
Yeah, we read all the comments on the podcast at this point, so I don't even have to go look at it. I just wait for Lee to tell me that people said something interesting, and I'm like, oh, that does sound interesting. That sounds like a good group I should maybe be in, but I'm not, because I'm in it, but I just don't really use Facebook anymore. So it's great.
Yeah. But until next time, thank you, Daniel, and thank you everyone for listening, and we will see you when we see you. Goodbye.
Cheers.
You have been listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. For other episodes, our links to Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and our Facebook group, as well as links to podcasts and websites of similar interest, please visit us at tmbdos.podbean.com. Thank you. Drive through.